given the risks involved for an entrepreneur, there aren't necessarily the returns there once were.
There's a lot of war wounds and a lot of scars to get to the point that you have this information, because it's not intuitive.
I think we know what to expect, and we expect the headache if we were starting all over again. Knowing what I know now, I don't know if I'd do it.
Istria Cafe serves the eclectic Hyde Park community, home to President Obama and the University of Chicago. Paul Pribaz got inspiration to open the coffee shop with his brother Mark after spending a summer in Italy.
I wanted to set out on my own and start a business, and in the early 2000s I kind of decided it was a good time and the economy was good. I built up some reserves and started our first coffee shop.
Many of these locally owned businesses like Istria Cafe not only make this neighborhood unique, but also provide a much needed economic boost to an underserved area. Yet, in spite of the importance of small business to Chicago, there's numerous laws on the books that make it difficult, if not impossible, for people to stay in business.
Unfortunately, in Chicago, there are a whole slew of additional challenges which are really unnecessary, because the city of Chicago has over 70 different business licenses that you might have to apply for. You'd have to get building permits and deal with zoning and all different departments in the city. And this is on top of the state of Illinois' requirements, which have a whole different set of license requirements and regulations.
The Chicago Code is actually, it's unique in a lot of ways. After the Chicago fire, it was one of the first cities in the world actually to develop a building code, so it was done for very noble reasons. What it's developed into, where most codes are renewed and reviewed on a 3-year basis, amendments come out, Chicago's actually reviewed annually. The impact is that you can get a permit in anticipation of what the code will be for that year, but the code actually hasn't been finalized even after they've issued your permit. And so what happens is the inspectors have enormous discretion to come and describe issues with your permit, even though it's made it through all of the reviews and people have looked at it and signed off on it and stamped it, and you've paid all your money, you build it to the code. At the very end, the inspector can tell you to do something else.
The whole setup kind of invites an environment where either bureaucrats reviewing applications in City Hall or the inspectors who are out on the streets dropping in on businesses can hold businesses hostage until the business owner does whatever that politician or bureaucrat wants.
It kind of sounds like the mob.
Well, there are some resemblances historically. The fact is the code is so complicated that any inspector can pop in at any time and find some kind of technical violation. They really have business people at their mercy.
One of my favorite stories from running the cafe is that at our original location we had the opportunity, given the geographic area around us, to run a sidewalk cafe in the summertime. Of course, you're using public property, so there's a process to go through to get a permit for that on an annual basis, which is visiting the alderman, showing your plans, demonstrating that you have the right mix and number of flowers and greenery in your plan, and taking it down to the city and paying the, how much?
It was $600
for the annual permit, and getting your permit, displaying it prominently, and then setting up your outdoor cafe. We set up the sidewalk cafe, and then the city came in and actually did sidewalk construction and tore out the whole area that our sidewalk cafe was permitted, and I think we were not able to use the space for close to 3 weeks, just paid for it. So we moved our chairs and tables kind of out of the way, and literally the next day, the sidewalk cafe inspector came and cited us that our chairs and tables were not in the big hole in the ground where they were permitted to be, but they were actually moved around the corner. And I was furious. It was again, like a day after they'd torn up the sidewalk, and this guy was telling us that because we weren't in compliance, it's a $240 fine.
Not only do business owners waste resources fighting unnecessary fines, but they must also navigate Chicago's complex maze of regulatory requirements. Many of these laws are outdated and redundant, costing entrepreneurs time and money.
The waterfall effect of some of these regulations is also interesting because, for example, the Chicago Code requires what they call 30% air return. I think that's the term, where your heating and air conditioning has to replenish 30% of the air in the space every X hours or whatever. Most of the rest of the country is 10%. So in fact, in the wintertime, we're required to heat the exterior of the building at a 3 times higher rate than the rest of the country here. And
what does that do to your electric costs?
Oh my goodness, it's really high. The utility bills are crazy. There are a number of items that are actually taxed differently. Water being a great example. It was the city council decided that they would go green, I think was the rationale at the time, by charging a 25% tax on a bottle of water, which required special paperwork, certifications of how you were going to collect the tax, record the tax, pay for the tax. Ultimately, the decision we made, which I think a lot of companies made, was that you rely on your distributor to collect the tax for you and remit the tax. But it's another filing, and it's another piece of paperwork that you have to go through.
Illinois has one of the highest tax rates in the country. In addition to paying various taxes, small business owners must also bear other expenses.
One of the issues with small business and self-employed people in this country is that we don't have the same health insurance advantages as big companies. So our health insurance is paid for with after-tax dollars for private insurance. And as a responsible parent, I keep insurance. And so the big hit, I think, was going from 1 kid to 2 kids. Our after-tax health insurance bill went from about $650 a month after tax to almost $1,000 a month after tax. And that was right at the point that, again, the store was opening. There were massive cash flow problems. We weren't taking a paycheck.
Paul took on a second job to earn extra income to support his family. When that turned into a full-time opportunity, he made the difficult decision to hand operation of the cafe over to his brother.
Up until that point, my role had really been more operational and just kind of concept development. And so I hadn't really focused so much on the finance. I have a background in finance, but that wasn't what I did. So I guess I didn't really understand the seriousness of the situation, and I guess the limitation of options, really. And as a small business, we just don't have the same purchasing power that large organizations have. So, we have to differentiate ourselves, provide a better product, provide better service, in hopes that people notice and choose to shop here.
A slow economy and excessive regulations have taken a toll on Istria's bottom line. To keep up with skyrocketing costs, the brothers closed their original location and raised prices at their second store. A prolonged recession could force Istria Cafe to shut its doors for good.
So how do you think this is affecting the local economy?
Oh, it's a horrible burden on the economy. The entrepreneurs are the people we count on to get the economy moving, to create the jobs that we need so desperately in Chicago and all over the country.
Small business is responsible for creating 65% of new jobs in our economy. For these entrepreneurs, help is on the way. Governors like Chris Christie are establishing task forces to ease the regulatory burden on small business owners.
Do you guys think you're going to survive this recession?
Things are getting better, and I am hopeful for the future.
The challenges we face have been challenges that millions of American businesses have faced, and fortunately we're still here. Our feeling is that it's businesses like ours, the small business, the entrepreneurial business, that is really going to pull the country out of recession, that will employ young people, that will introduce new goods and services to places they haven't been before. And that's why we think that there should be a place for us in the economy.